What happens when a government investigates how schools actually teach reading? In 2019, the Ontario Human Rights Commission did exactly that. And then 3 years later, they released a report that was so damning, they called it a violation of students' human rights. And here's the scary part. The same methods are in classrooms across the continent to this day. I'm Rebecca. I've taught literacy for 15 years using science of reading methods. And I run a tutoring company where we work with struggling readers every single day. When I first saw this government report, I couldn't believe what I was reading. Not because it was shocking, but because it confirmed exactly what I've been seeing in my classroom for years. So let me walk you through what they found, because this changes everything. Here's what happened. In 2019, parent advocates pushed the Ontario Human Rights Commission to investigate how schools were teaching reading. The commission reviewed 8 major school boards, it examined curriculum documents, it analyzed teacher training programs, and it looked at student outcomes going back to 2005. The commission brought in experts in reading science, special education law, and literacy research. This wasn't some random audit. This was a full human rights investigation, the kind that governments do when they're looking for systemic discrimination. And after 3 years of investigation, they released their findings with a conclusion so serious it made national headlines. But before I tell you what they found, you need to understand what was happening to the kids while this was all being investigated. The commission documented something devastating. Students who struggle with reading weren't just falling behind academically. They were experiencing clinical depression, anxiety disorders, many developed severe school avoidance. The long-term data was even worse. Students who didn't learn to read properly by 3rd grade had significantly higher dropout rates, lower employment rates as adults, and this one is what floored me. They had higher rates of incarceration. The commission found that struggling readers were being psychologically damaged by a system that was supposed to help them. They were being taught using methods that don't align with how the brain actually learns to read. And here's what made it a human rights issue. The students most affected were those with learning disabilities or those from disadvantaged backgrounds. So just how bad were the outcomes? The numbers tell a brutal story. 26% of grade 3 students in Ontario were failing to meet provincial reading standards. Not just struggling, failing. For students in special education, it was worse. 53% were failing. That's more than half. These numbers hadn't improved since 2005. 15 years of the same methods, the same curriculum, the same teacher training, and nothing was getting better. Something was fundamentally broken. So what exactly were schools teaching that was causing the damage? The culprit is the 3-cueing system, also called balanced literacy. Here's how it works. When a child gets stuck on a word, teachers are trained to say, look at the picture. What would make sense? Look at the first letter. Sounds reasonable, right? Except it's teaching kids to guess instead of decode. It's training them to rely on context clues and pictures rather than actually reading the letters. The commission found this approach in curriculum documents, teacher training materials, and professional development programs across the province. Which brings us to the moment that changes everything. After 3 years of investigation, they found something stunning. The methods Ontario had been using for nearly 2 decades, the 3-cueing system and balanced literacy, had actually never been recommended by the government's own reading experts. In fact, the commission found these approaches had been discredited in many peer-reviewed studies. The research didn't just fail to support these methods, it actively contradicted them. So here's what we have. A government teaching reading using methods their own experts never recommended, causing measurable psychological harm to students. And that's why they called it a human rights violation. The Ontario government agreed to eliminate 3-cueing from all curriculum and teacher training. They committed to implementing science of reading approaches instead. And in 2023, they released a completely revised literacy curriculum. This was the first major update since 2006. For the first time in nearly 20 years, Ontario students are being taught to read using methods that align with decades of neuroscience and cognitive research. But here's the question. How many other provinces and states are still using the same broken methods? If you want to know what actually works, the science of reading methods, which have replaced the 3-cueing system, I'm breaking that down next week. Everything I use with my own students you can start using at home. So hit subscribe so you don't miss miss it, and I'll see you in the next one.